So I kind of want to talk a little bit about pensions and what changed.
Well, the way a pension worked is a company would say, you work for us for 40 years. When it comes time for you to retire, we will pay for your retirement. And the way that they would do that is they had these actuaries, people working at companies, plugging in numbers saying, okay, we think you're going to live until you're 74 years old, and then we have to pay you X amount of dollars every single month. So they're plugging these numbers in, and then a couple things happened. First, the people started living longer. And so instead of living till 74, people started living until 77, 78, 79. And then these things started to increase the amount of money that these companies paid out because they were paying out until a question mark. Mm-hmm. They didn't know how long you were going to live for. And so they would just keep paying and paying and paying. And then the cost of living also went up. So it was hard for them to predict how much money that you would actually need. And if people weren't able to live off of enough money, then that would create its own issues. So that's what created this whole pension crisis. We're still seeing it happen right now because some people are still relying on their pensions, and you're seeing pensions go bust around the country. But this pension crisis was just created by the idea of the government or your boss, depending on who your employer was, because you had a lot of government pensions which are also going under. But you had your employer promising you to pay for your retirement. And so you felt like you had no need to really do any of this investing because that was reserved for the institutions. Investing was reserved for the wealthy. And so they would take care of all that for you and promise you a return. And then when it came time for you to retire, they were supposed to pay you. Well, now that corporations are realizing the real cost of these pensions, they're not able to maintain them, so they started letting them go. So that was the whole reason why pensions started to go away. That's when Social Security really became popular as a way to take care of people, because if it's not the corporation, it'll be the government. But then the government ran into the same issues. People live longer, cost of living goes up. The government can't invest their money and get the best returns. They have all their other administrative fees. And so here we are now with the 401k as a compromise, where now it is the individual in charge. You can choose how much money you want to invest. You can choose how you want to retire. If you invest more, the goal is you'll be able to have more money when it comes time for you to retire. But again, you never want to just rely on your 401k or your IRA to be able to retire. You need to have your own investments. And I'm not saying don't have a 401k. I'm not saying don't have an IRA. I'm saying try it and figure out what's right for you, because as you kind of go on the financial education journey, you're going to see where's the right path for you. Some of you are going to start it and you're going to say, screw that. I don't want a 401k. Why am I locking up my money? I can invest in real estate and build cash flow every single year. And in 10 years, I'm going to have enough cash flow to be able to live off of. So why do I want to wait 40 years to start accessing my money? I want to invest it today. That way I have my cash flow. That way I can live off of it in 10 years. And now I'm financially free. Or you're going to come up with your other investment options. You're going to figure out whatever it is that you want to do. But this is where you got to know yourself, which comes down to also financial education. That way you can make the right decisions for you.
So I get paid, and we talked about before, kind of having ways to split your money. We talked about investing and saving. So now I'm investing. What do I do next? Is that it? Am I building wealth?
If you're investing your money, that's the whole plan. Your goal is to now invest your money into the assets that are going to either grow in value or pay you with cash flow. That way you have money to invest. Your savings, you should be saving only for 3 reasons. You're saving for an emergency. We talked about 3 to 12 months worth of saving expenses. Mm-hmm. You should be saving for purchases because you have to transact. So you want to make sure you have money to buy things, whether it's a big thing, maybe a car, maybe you want to buy a home, you need a down payment for that. Or you should be saving for investments. That's the 3 reasons why you should be saving your money. And then you have your spending money, where now when you spend money, you want to make sure that you're only spending money on things that you can afford. And you don't want to be financing your consumer expenses. So afford means if you want to buy something that's not a necessity, that you don't need to survive, that's not making you any money, you got to follow my rule of 5. If you can't buy 5 of them, you can't afford 1 of them. You want to go out and buy a $1,000 iPhone? Sure, no problem. You can't finance it if you want to be able to afford it. And you got to make sure you have $5,000 to afford a $1,000 phone. And this goes against modern thinking, because everyone's going to say, $5,000 to afford a $1,000 phone? Are you crazy? Yes, I am crazy. But if you want to be wealthy, you got to stop spending all your money. You're giving Apple all of your money. They don't need it. You need it more than they do. So don't go out and buy the new iPhone. Buy a used phone that's working. Keep the extra cash in your pocket and invest that money. So this is where that spending section is. You got to be smart with your money and not just blow your money.
Mm-hmm. But if everybody did that, though, we kind of have a problem, don't you think?
Why?
If everybody did that in the U.S., nobody spent money. Don't you think
I'm not saying don't spend money. I'm saying be smarter with your money. If all 350 million Americans suddenly became financially educated and stopped spending and living beyond their means, what would happen? Is that what you're saying?
That's what exactly.
Well, our economy would slow down in the short term because now all of a sudden spending would slow down because people are not living off of debt. We live in a credit-based economy, which means people don't spend based off of how many dollars they have in their pocket. They spend based off of how much debt I can qualify for. And in the economic environment that we live in, nobody knows if you're spending credit or dollars. If I go to a restaurant and I only have $20 in my bank account, but I spend $100 because I put it on my credit card, the restaurant owner doesn't care and they don't know. They're getting you $100. Now you have to pay the consequences of that because now when you go home, you get your credit card bill, you only got $20. Now you're in credit card debt. So now you have to pay back this $100 plus interest. So in the economic world, in the marketplace, nobody knows if you're spending dollars or debt. And this is how our economy runs. The reason we live in this credit-based society is because it allows the economy to grow much faster. Because now you're not spending $100, you're spending $100 plus credit. So you have a bigger spending capability, which allows you to now spend more, which allows the economy to grow faster. Our economic system is run on spending, right? The more you spend, the more somebody else makes. If I take $100, I spend it at a restaurant. This restaurant now has $100 that they can use to pay their employees, to invest into growth, to open up a new restaurant, to pay a new chef, to create a new product. So the more I spend, the more money this company has, the more money they have to grow. If I suddenly stopped spending, if the entire country suddenly stopped spending, we saw that happen in 2020 with the pandemic. We've seen it happen in 2008 when people run out of money. People do stop spending. We see it happen all the time. Anytime you see a financial crash, a recession, or a worry about a crash, people get financially smart and they stop spending. What happens? The economy slows down. But then what always happens, every time we've seen this happen in history, is things start getting better and people go back to their old spending habits. In 2020, we saw the biggest credit card pay down in the history of American history. In 2021, we saw the biggest credit card debt increase in the history of time. So, we've seen it happen. If everybody became financially educated, you would see a slowdown in the economy in the short term. But let's assume that now we stuck with that. People stayed financially educated. So now people were able to build their spending. People were able to build their savings. They were able to build some investments. Now what? Now people would be investing their money into more productive assets, into investing their money. Maybe people would invest into new business ideas. People would invest into new factories, into new manufacturing plants. So people would be investing into productive assets. And in the short term, you would see a slowdown because you wouldn't have as many people buying. But if people have now savings, they'd be able to eventually start to buy again. And that would cause a sustainable growth in the economy. And that would cause less booms and busts that we see in our economic system because now people are not so reliant on paycheck to paycheck spending and living. When the 2020 pandemic happened, this is a prime example. The economy shut down. Less than 2 weeks later, we're in a crisis because a massive chunk of our country doesn't have money to eat. Businesses have no money to continue functioning. Businesses had less than 14 days worth of cash in their bank accounts. Very few businesses had more than 30 days worth of cash to run in their bank accounts. Everybody from people to massive corporations were reliant on their next paycheck in order to eat, in order to pay their bills, and in order to survive. And as soon as we saw a slowdown, the whole thing imploded. Now we were quote unquote saved because the Federal Reserve Bank opened up the money printer and they started flooding the economy with free money, right? They started passing out unemployment checks, stimulus checks, bailouts. Just money started pouring into the economy, which is fine right now because, hey, we're on top of the world financially. We are the world's superpower. We have the world's reserve currency. But it's a concern because we are so reliant on the next check that if anything slows down, who gets screwed over? Well, it's anybody who doesn't have money. And this is where you have to start taking care of yourself. Because what happens if the Fed doesn't save you next time? If you enjoyed this short clip from my longer videos, here's another clip that I think you'll love. And while you're at it, if you're interested in learning more about how to start generating passive income, our team put together an amazing guide that goes over what passive income is, how to start generating passive income, and different passive income strategies. All you gotta do is click that button right over there. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep hustling.